Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. This is Dennis Brown, and this is my weekly Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Today, we're going to be doing another Q&A. So I'm excited that you're here. If you're catching me on replay, hit me up in the comments, hashtag replay. Love to hear from you. Let me make sure that my sound is working properly. It's not. I had it on the thing, so we're going to improve that. Hopefully that made my sound a little bit better. Because now I'm on my primary mic. So, hey, thank you for joining me again. Today we're going to be doing a live Q&A. But hold your questions. I want you to write your questions down. I want you to have your questions ready, but I want you to hold your questions. Today is all about trying to get your questions answered about how to start and grow a successful freight broker or freight agency business. Again, if you don't know me, I've been an entrepreneur for probably over 30 years now, which, that's crazy, over 30 years. Built 4 multi-million-dollar companies in 4 different industries. Been very, very fortunate. Did over $200 million as a freight broker. Ended up selling that company. But along the way, I put together a program called my Freight Broker Bootcamp, which is a startup program. It's an online course. It takes you from A to Z, online, self-paced, from home. You don't have to go to a classroom. We've had over 10,000 students go through that program, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. So I'm sure that there's a bunch of my students in this that'll be in this live. I'm sure there's a bunch of people that just found this on YouTube or on Facebook or on LinkedIn. So I'm excited that you're here. Thank you so much. You're going to notice a little difference here. I have a pair of glasses on the top of my head. Apparently my eyes are getting a little older, and sometimes the font here in these lives is really small and hard to read. So I may call in for a little bit of help here throughout with these glasses, but bear with me. I think we'll have some fun, get your questions answered, and I'm excited that you're here. So hit me up in the comments with the city and state you're logging in from. And what we'll do from there is we'll do some shout outs. So do some quick shout outs. Then we're going to jump into Q&A, but hold your questions. Okay. All right, cool. So what do we got? I'm going to need them right away. Accounting Imperial Express. Welcome. Thank you. Oh, sorry about that. I put the wrong year. Of course, the classic mistake in for the date for the live. I apologize on that. I'll try to get better with that. John, welcome. Shaka Robinson, welcome. Freight Hustler, welcome from Richmond, Virginia. John Stamper from Phoenix, Arizona, welcome. Shaka's from Hope Mills, North Carolina. Thank you so much. We got TJ Hines from Tampa, Florida. So we got a bunch of people. We've got Nathan from Detroit. We got Cynthia from Maryland. Cynthia Moore, you're back. Jay Royce from New York City. Elliot from Mobile, Alabama. Robin from Atlanta, Georgia. So we got people from all over the place. I'm really excited that you're here. I truly appreciate it. We're going to try to keep this short, but a lot of that's going to fall on you, okay? And what I mean by that is when I say go, okay, when I say let's go, you got to get your questions in the chat box right away, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to spend here about 30 minutes doing a quick Q&A to try to answer your questions. So the quicker you get your questions in after I say go, the more likely those questions are going to get answered, okay? Now, I do come back in later throughout the week sometimes, and I might be able to give you a reply through text, through the thread, but it's not the same as me being able to answer it here. What I do here is I try to take your question and I try to peel the onion back so that I can give you a much more detailed answer than I ever could in a written format. Okay. So I hope you guys are ready. I hope you guys are ready to go. We'll do a few more shout outs and then we'll get going. We got Corey Buchan from Billings, Montana, as always. We got AJ from Pennsylvania. We got Julie Savage. Welcome from Utah. That's an old timer. She's been around, not old. I'm sorry about that. A long timer, we'll say. Anthony from PA. Joseph from Jersey City. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. All right, guys, the ball's in your court. Here's what we're going to do. Hit me up in the comments with whatever questions you have, but be specific. Okay? Be specific. Don't ask a question like, how do I get shippers? Because my answer to you is going to be sales. Okay. So be more specific, like how do I get shippers with LinkedIn, or how do I get shippers with cold calling, or how do I get, you know what I mean? How do I get shippers at trade shows, right? So those are the sorts of things, questions. I mean, whether that was just an example, but maybe it's about rating. Maybe it's about sourcing carriers. Maybe it's about Who knows, right? Any questions you have, I will do my absolute best. I promise you, I don't have the answers for everything. If I don't have the answers, I'll try to point you in the right direction. So the ball's in your court. Let's get rocking. Hit me up with some questions and we'll get the show on the road. Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see what we got. TJ Hines, shippers are now sending me lanes to quote, and most of them require contingent cargo insurance. How much is contingent cargo? Should I carry as a beginning broker 100 or 250K? All right, cool. So just so you guys understand, there are some shippers. First of all, contingent cargo insurance to become a broker or an agent is optional. It's not a required coverage. Okay. But there are some shippers, particularly larger shippers, right? Higher volume shippers, particularly, that will require brokers to have what's called contingent cargo insurance, which means it's not the primary cargo, it's contingent, which means that the carrier's cargo comes first and then the broker's contingent cargo is a supplement. Okay. So that's kind of the best way to position that. All right. Now you can get contingent cargo at different levels, right, of coverage, like 100,000 or 250,000. What I would do is I would get the contingent cargo at the level that the shipper that you are working with requires it. So if they require 100 and you believe the investment in that contingent cargo is worthwhile, then get it for 100. And then what you're going to do is you're going to get that client, you're going to start moving some freight, and then you're going to subsidize the cost of that insurance, right, that you might pay, whether that be $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 a year. That the prices are all over the boards because the coverage varies. But ultimately, you're going to subsidize the cost of that policy with that one shipper, and then you can leverage that policy to work with other shippers as well, because the policy itself works on more than just one shipper. So you don't get contingent cargo per shipper, you get it for your business as a whole. Okay. So I would say that, if most brokers have contingent cargo in the form of 100,000, but if they have, say maybe if it's refrigerated freight and they're doing things that are a little bit more expensive, like seafood or things that have a higher dollar value, then you may want to increase the value of that. But again, that really depends upon your shipper. They're going to be able to give you an idea of what the average value of a truckload is. And they're going to give, if they require contingent cargo, they're going to tell you how much you need. So TJ, I hope that helps. That was a good question. Thank you. Oh, here we go. Look at this. Not a question, but we have a viewer from South Africa. Amazing. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. I do get people from South America and Central America and Europe and Asia and Canada, all over the place. It really is truly amazing. So appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Okay. Called to get a freight broker bond and they require 25,000 in liquid assets. Now that will make things hard. Okay. So here's the thing. All right. It depends upon your credit. It depends upon the bonding company. Okay. Trust me. If you have good credit, let's say you're in the high 600s, 700 range, you're not going to have to put up assets. Okay. If you have worse credit, if your credit is lower, then if you decide you really want to start as a freight broker and you got to get your bond, then you may have to put some assets up, or you may have to have some sort of collateral, right? But here's what I'm going to tell you. I would not suggest that if anybody in this audience is required to put up collateral for their bond, my strongest suggestion to you is don't worry about getting your freight broker authority right now. Start out as a freight agent. Okay. Why do I say that? I say that because it costs less to get started. There's less risk. The job is easier. Okay. And you can get started very, very quickly. Okay. So I have clients and students of mine and friends of mine as agents, not brokers. They don't own their own authorities. They don't own trucks. They don't do anything, that make $1 million plus per year in commission in their pocket. Now, these aren't guys that have been in the industry for 20 years. These are guys that have been in the industry for 5, 7, 8, 9 years. It's not like they spent their entire career there. Okay. So what I'm trying to say to you is that it's very possible to make a significant income as a freight agent. Now, not all of you are going to do that. And not all of you are even going to make six figures. But what I can tell you is that the opportunity is there as a freight agent. In my opinion, if you have limited funds or limited experience, it is absolutely the best place to start. It's the best way to start, because if you can't make money as a freight agent, you're not going to make money as a freight broker. Okay, because it's way easier. Okay, so I strongly suggest you consider that. Now, if you do have good credit or you do have some capital, then getting your bonds fine. But then remember this: just because you start out as an agent 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, when you're in a different position financially or credit wise, that doesn't mean you can't get your own broker authority then, if you choose to. So I hope that helps. Okay, J. Royce asks, is there an app or software that has a pool of shippers like Truckstop has carriers? Yes. Let me give you an example. Let me see. I'm going to give you a link that you can follow to a great source. Okay, here you go. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/free leads. That link will allow, that specific link will allow you to go sign up for Apollo for free with no credit card. So you don't even have to put a credit card in. You get free access through that link, okay? And Apollo has millions of businesses in it around the world. You can search by industry, you can search by size, you can search by geography, you can search by job title. You can hone your list down to whatever niche you're really focused on. So yes, there is a tool like that, and there are multiple tools like that. Some are very expensive, some are, but have really, really good data. Some are not as expensive and have really bad data. But here's what I know. I have used Apollo. They have very good data. Now, their business model is this. They give you access to all this data, but they have ancillary services, other services that they count on you wanting to purchase later. So they give you access to millions of shippers and businesses around the world in all different variety of niches and industries, but it costs you absolutely zero. So if you use that link, you can sign up for free with an email and no credit card. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let me get back to the questions here. Where are we at? Oh, we got a bunch of questions. That's good. Okay, cool. Hope that helps, Jay Royce. Can an auto transport niche successfully handle both retail one-off shipments while focusing on commercial shipments, which is longer term? For example, auto dealers and auctions. Yes, I believe you could. But the real money, in my opinion, is in the commercial accounts. And here's why. Let's say, for example, I was a retired snowbirder from Buffalo that migrated to Florida every winter because it's snowing out and it's cold and I want to get out of here. And I have you move my car from New York to Florida so that I can have that car for the next 3 or 4 months or as long as I'm down there. You might make a little bit of money on that one time. You might even be able to move that shipment back up north when I come back in the spring. So you move 2 loads a year. Okay. So your maximum opportunity with me as a consumer client is 2 loads. But on the commercial side, let's say, for example, you start working for an auction, or you start working for a car dealership, or you start working for something, a car manufacturer, something like that. Whatever it is in the commercial space around the auto industry, now the lifetime value is much higher. Let's say you only move 1 load a week. 1 load a week that you're making $200 a load on. That's $10,000 a year. That's 52 loads a year that you're making money on versus 2 loads a year. And 1 load a week would be a very, very small shipper. So yeah, I do believe you could do both. I believe you could entertain both. They're very different systems for getting those clients, right? Consumer clients are typically more advertising based. You're advertising on Google or different platforms, whereas the commercial clients require more sales skills and outreach through phone and email and LinkedIn and face-to-face. So I truly believe you could do both. I think the bigger upside is the commercial, but that would be your choice. So I hope that helps. Okay, Authority secured 4 clients, but all wanting our carrier side to fulfill CVG need. Approaching as ABFB, okay, is great intro, but seems most want the carrier, not 3PL. Okay, so here's the thing. You bring up a good point. Let me translate this. So what's happened is this person has a carrier side, they have trucks, and they opened a brokerage side. Okay, so they now have both, right? So they can broker loads on other trucks and they can put loads on their own trucks. Good for you. That's fantastic. But it all comes down to how you are selling the service. If you're selling yourself as an asset-based carrier and that's what they hear, then that's what they're going to focus on. Okay? Then they're going to want you to move it with their with trucks. That in a perfect world, or in a lot of cases, that's what a lot of shippers are going to want you to do. Not all of them, and it's not even a majority. Most shippers don't even care if you broker the loads out as long as you're a legitimate broker. But the point is, you will have some shippers that will say asset only, right? But that's a lot of that comes down to their preference and how you introduce it to them. So what you might be better off doing is, rather than selling the asset-based or focusing on being an asset-based, sell it as a brokerage and let them know that you do have your own assets, but right now your capacity is on the brokerage side because your trucks are at capacity. Okay. So it really comes down to the companies you're talking to, because some are going to just, whether you have the brokerage side or not, many of the shippers are going to tell you, some of the shippers are going to tell you, hey, we require assets. That's just the way it is. Now, I'm going to tell you that's really a lie in most cases, because they do have brokers they work with. They just don't want any new brokers. So they're saying they don't know you well enough to bring you on as a broker. So there's a couple strategies where you can use assets. You can use assets to get your foot in the door, and then you can upsell freight brokerage, or you can sell freight brokerage, right? And then use the assets as a lure to try to help them feel more secure that if somebody falls off, you might be able to use your own equipment. So those are just a couple of thoughts. I hope that helps. Jay Royce, is drayage a good niche to start? Yes, drayage is a good niche. Drayage can be a very good niche, right? So just so everybody understands what drayage is, when you have an intermodal movement, and that all that means, don't get scared, it's not that fancy. Like, for example, when people are importing goods from China, okay? In China, there's a manufacturing facility, and then there's the port, and then there's the ocean, and then in the US, there's the port, and then there's a final destination. From the manufacturing facility to the port, it goes on a truck, okay? And from the port to the port, it goes on a ship, obviously. And when it lands in the port in the US, it's got to go on a truck again to get to wherever the final destination is, whether that be a warehouse or whether that be the end shipper, okay? So drayage to brokers in the US is typically the truck component to the port or from the port, all right? And it's usually carrying a container of some sort, right? So ultimately, that's drayage. Now, that can also apply in rail freight. So rail's the same thing. It picks up on a truck, it goes to the railhead, it takes the line haul on the rail, and then it goes to another railhead, and then it gets taken off and put on a truck for final destination. The same goes for air freight. So there's intermodal air, rail, and ocean freight, all of which requires drayage, which is that short trucking component, right? So yeah, so drayage can be a great niche, but typically as a freight broker, if you're going to be focusing on the drayage niche, your customer is going to change a little bit. Your customer is typically not going to be the end shipper. You're not going to work directly with Pepsi or Nestle, because they have international freight forwarders that do their import and export, right? Because they can do the entire movement. Brokers can't do that typically, right? So what will happen is the international freight forwarder of Coke or Pepsi will become your client, and they will outsource that drayage trucking component to a broker as a way to save time and resources in trying to manage, a large volume of freight. So I hope that helps. If you got a follow-up, let me know. What is the best way to learn everything about a specific niche, such as lumber, trusses, and building materials? Example, terminology, shipper lingo, types of vehicles, equipment needed. Okay, what is the best way to learn everything about a specific niche? The best way to learn about a specific niche, the best way that I've ever learned about a specific niche is to simply immerse myself into that niche. It involves a lot of reading, a lot of listening, a lot of watching. It involves research. Now, the advantage you have that I didn't have when I first got started is you have AI. You have things like Google Gemini. You have things like ChatGPT that you can go to that will help you do a lot of that research very quickly. Now, of course, you can just use Google, right? And you can do some searches there. There are YouTube channels, there are blogs, there are trade journals, right? There are media sources and information specific to that niche. Now, you can also, I'm sure there sometimes are core, depending on the niche, not necessarily lumber, but sometimes there's even more advanced information about specific niches. So what it really comes down to is you have to immerse yourself in that niche, right? You need to be listening to podcasts that are associated with it. You need to be watching YouTube channels that are associated with it. You need to be on websites and blogs associated with it. So you want to trade journals, like industry specific associations associated with each of those niche, because lumber and all the different niches have different associations, which also provide a lot of information. So I hope that's a good start, but you want to immerse yourself into that, understand the terminology, understand a little bit of the background of the industry, understand what drives that industry, what are the primary products that drive the most revenue in those industries. So you want to do some research, but that won't take you long. I mean, to start getting your feet wet. Now, you're not going to be an expert in it overnight, but the fact is you can know more about a specific freight niche than 99% of the population probably in 2 to 4 weeks, literally, if you immerse yourself. So I hope that helps. Good question, Robin. So here's the answer. When I put together Freight Broker Bootcamp, my startup program, rather than putting 2 different courses, a freight agent course and a freight broker course, I combine them into one course. Now, let me explain to you why. Because most of the students many of the students, I don't know what percentage, but a large percentage of the students that want to get into the freight industry don't know if they want to be an agent or a broker. So rather than buying 2 different courses, I combine them into one. That's one reason. So it saves you money. Number 2 is a lot of the jobs, a lot of the skills, a lot of the day-to-day that an agent does is the same as a broker. Now, the broker has additional requirements like the billing and the collections and the licensing and the insurance and the technology, right? So they've got some additional roles. But from a day-to-day perspective, moving freight is pretty much the same, right? Finding shippers and moving freight for a broker is the same as it is for an agent. Does that make sense? So I've combined those into one program called my Freight Broker Bootcamp. It's a startup program. I had over 10,000 students go through that program. And here's the best part, Robin. We offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee. So if you're not happy, just send us an email and we'll send your money back. Okay? So I hope that helps. Where are we at on time? Okay, cool. Brandon, I'm having issues breaking in with my consignees. I move military grade explosives going to the top manufacturers in the US. I'm shipping to them 3 to 4 times a week. What's some advice to get in? Okay, so congratulations, Brandon. You're already moving freight for what sounds like, I don't know if you're working for the DOD or you're working for some government agency, or if you have some specific shippers that specialize in munitions or ammunition or arms, right? Weapons. So your question is, how do I get into the consignee? So the consignee is the people that it's being, just for everybody in the background here, is the place it's being delivered to. So if he's picking up at ABC widgets and it's going to XYZ retail, just a hypothetical, the XYZ retail is the consignee. Okay, so that's where it's going to in that case. So what he wants to do is he wants to get business from them. So the answer to that is really kind of a what I call the daisy chain effect, right? So because you're delivering into that facility, you can usually break into a phone call or a face-to-face meeting pretty easy, all right? Because you've got that background. You already know, they already know one of your customers because they're buying from them. And you can already document the fact that you've been on their docks, you've delivered their freight, you understand what they're doing, right? So you've already got a little bit of rapport, right? It's not a cold call. It's what I call a warm call, because you could call up the shipping manager and say, hey, Joe, it's Dennis. Hey, we've been moving freight for for XYZ, and it's been on your dock. We've been delivering it to you for quite a while. Really appreciate it. You guys do a really great job, by the way. Thank you so much. I'm curious. And then you start asking some questions, right? And those questions are going to be, around you trying to qualify if there's some opportunity there, right? But because you've got that instant rapport, because there's a certain level of trust above and beyond a normal cold call, you're going to get better answers. Okay. So it really comes down to reaching out either through email or through phone. I prefer phone. If you can ever get face-to-face, great. But then it's bridging that gap, using that relationship and using that experience that you already have delivering into their facility to bridge the gap of trust so that you can ask some questions and see if there's an opportunity where you may be able to help them. Because here's the thing, that social proof that you have of already working with the vendor that they know is incredibly powerful. Now, the next step of that is if you can get a testimonial from the shipper that you're already working with that's delivering to that consignee, and you can get a testimonial from them saying how great you are and what a great job you've done, and you use that in conjunction with your outreach, that's a slam dunk. That's probably the most powerful way that you can build trust and get your foot in the door. So I hope that helps. Okay, what do we got here? Let's see. Just became a freight agent. I have one customer, approximately 200,000 in shipping. I know they are so low tiered shipper. Wait, I know there are so lower tier shippers out there like lumber where margins is very little. Are shippers like this worth it? Okay. So your question is, you have a client and in some niches that the margins on freight are lower. Yes, that's true. 100%. So sometimes in some specific industry, let's say for example, like recycling or garbage industry, or the lumber industry is notorious for that, right? Sometimes they have much higher pricing pressure on freight, but that doesn't mean there's not an opportunity to make 10 or 15% margins. It just means that you're probably not going to be making higher margins in the 20 to 30% range, which you can in other industries, right? And not only just other industries, but with other shippers. But I don't want to paint a broad brush across the entire lumber industry, because there are probably some companies in the lumber industry that are more focused on service. But the thing is what you have to do, and just understand this is what I want you to understand. Complexity creates opportunity, and complexity creates margin. Now, listen carefully. You got to pay attention to that. What I mean by that is if you're just doing a one pick, one drop flatbed load of lumber that doesn't require a whole lot of complexity, or a one pick, one drop van load that doesn't require a whole lot of complexity, right? There will be less opportunities there and less margin there, but it doesn't mean you can't make money there. But if you want to find more opportunities and you want to increase your margin, you have to solve more problems, which means you need to look for some complexity. And complexity can come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Rather than a one pick, one drop van load, maybe it's a one pick, 4 stop van load, right? You got 4 stops, right? Or maybe it's a van load that requires pads and straps, because maybe it's furniture or something, or some product that might get damaged, or, maybe it's expedited van load from point A to point B, which adds complexity. So those are examples of very basic one pick, one drop loads versus looking for complexity. Right? So I hope that answers your question. Maybe you'll, but yeah, there are lower margin niches. It still can be worth it. But what I'm going to tell you is this. Here's my rule of thumb. If you can't make $100 a load, meaning $100 in gross margin a load, right? I probably don't want to mess with that shipper, because you don't want to be trying to make money hustling $25 and $50 freight. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't get in the door with lower margins and then work your margins up. And you won't know that until you try. But ultimately, if you can't make $100 a load as a broker or as an agent, then in my opinion, there's probably better opportunities out there for you. So I would seek those opportunities, but that's your call. So I hope that helps. I kind of went a little off script there and a little off, but I wanted to try to add a little bit of texture to it. Okay, Robin asked, shifting careers, would this be the best way to go to get your feet wet to start out as an agent? I believe that if you don't have a lot of experience, okay, in the industry, and or you don't have some capital set aside for your bond, right, then I think starting as an freight agent is the best way to go. It's the best gig in town. You don't have to get a bond. You don't have to get an authority. You don't have to get any certification, okay? You don't have to set up a big office. You have very little fixed overhead up front. You can get started as a freight agent for hundreds of dollars versus a broker that, depending upon your bond costs, can be in the thousands of dollars, right? So, yeah, I think starting out as an agent is the best gig in town, right? You get paid 50 to 70% of the profit on any loads that you generate. And the fact is, like I've said before, and I'll say 1,000 more times before I take a dirt nap, and that is this. If you can't make money as a freight agent, you're not going to make money as a freight broker. Plain and simple. Okay? So it's a very low risk, low cost way to enter the industry. And then you always have options later. So yes, I believe the agent, particularly coming from another industry, I think the freight agent business is a much better way to start out the business. How can I leverage AI in my brokerage? Well, it's kind of a generic question, but most of the AI work is going to be done for you. But let me explain to you why. Because the CRMs and the TMS and the load boards are already deploying AI into their systems. And those are the systems that you use daily. So most of the AI benefit for you will be through those providers, because they're integrating with other providers. Now, I think that's probably the most likely, especially today. Secondarily, what you're going to want to do as far as things that AI can do is you're going to want to put together a list of activities that you do every day, and put together a list of things that you could teach somebody to do, or lower level skills, and a list of higher level, more difficult things to do that only you can do. And then what you want to do is you want to try to find solutions for those lower level skills. So for example, maybe like check calls, right? Like if you wanted, or, if you wanted to have a system that was doing check calls for you, right? That was calling up a driver and getting a status, you could probably do that. Now there are other ways to do it, but that's my point. If you, for example, if you want to use a lot of the tools now are like around vetting carriers and trying to create some automation and some AI around that. Tracking and tracing, right? There's different tools like MacroPoint and TextLocate and all these other tools. But from an internal perspective, if you want to start building your business by leveraging some marketing might be a great way for you to use the tool, right? To help create your website or optimize your website, or to create blog content, or to create video content, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can use AI, but most of the ways that a freight broker or freight agent will use it and leverage it to enhance their business will be through the current providers that they're already working with, a CRM, a TMS, a load board, right? Because they're heavily developing and integrating AI right now as a way to enhance their offerings and to stand out from competition. And you are the benefactor of that. So I hope that helps. Okay, with insurance, do you think it's worth it having E&O along with CCI? Okay, both of them have a place. CCI is contingent cargo insurance, okay? And E&O is errors and emissions insurance. I never had errors and emissions insurance through the entire time of my brokerage, okay? Now, I'm not telling you that you shouldn't get it or you don't need it because I don't know you. But my point is that, or I don't know your business, but the point is that those are coverages that you can get. Now, they're not cheap. E&O insurance isn't cheap. Contingent cargo insurance isn't always cheap. So the point being that, you have to make that decision yourself. I believe that the insurance that you will probably get more value out of in regards to acquiring shippers will be the contingent cargo, which will open up some doors, particularly with large shippers. But I will say, if you're a startup, if you're a brand new broker, you should not be focusing on the large Fortune 500 brands. You should be focusing on small to medium-sized shippers for a whole host of reasons, right? The sales cycle is easy, quicker. The access to the decision makers is easier. Competition is less, right? Less formality and bureaucracy in getting onboarded. There's a whole variety of reasons why smaller shippers are better, right? For new brokers in particular. But yeah, I hope that helps. Vashaka, how are you, my dear? Hope business is going well. Vashaka has a brokerage she started several years ago, has done multi-millions of dollars per year as a broker, right? And is really amazing. I had her on an interview of one of my students. She took my boot camp and then she also took my sales accelerator. So yeah, I think if you guys go to my YouTube channel and you look for her in a success story, her and I had a great conversation. She talks about some of the mistakes she made and some of the things she'd do different. And she talks a lot about that during that. So it was really a great interview. Thank you for that. We did that a while ago. We should probably regroup, Vishaka, and have another, maybe have another interview, see how things are going now. Okay, I'm scrolling, looking for some questions, and then we're going to wrap up because I'm already over 30 minutes, but give me a second here. Maybe I can. Okay. Avery Hill, how do you put together your shipper packet? Don't overcomplicate it. It's really simple. There's probably two primary components that you're going to need in your shipper packet. Your shipper packet is going, if you have a broker, if you are using a broker shipper agreement, then that will be part of it. The other part of it will be a credit application where a one-page credit application where they will fill that out. And you will use that as a way to run credit because you get their name, their address, their billing contacts, their Dun & Bradstreet number, some references, and they agree to your basic terms like 30-day terms or whatever your terms are. And somebody signs it, and that's your credit app, right? And then you use that information as a way to research that client on their credit worthiness as far as how much business you're going to be able to extend to them, okay? So those are the primary things, right, with your shipper packet. I guess it depends on how you're using it. I really never did anything with shipper packets until the prospect had already said they want to do business with us. So I wasn't sending that out to every person that I talked to on the phone, right? So that was more of an onboarding packet that had to be addressed before we could onboard them to start moving freight. It's not a one-page sales sheet. It's not a brochure. It's not a, customer testimonials. It's not your website, right? You've already got a website for that stuff. If they want to see that stuff, they see it on a website, right? So I hope that makes sense. If you got a follow-up, let me know. Okay, Jay Royce, as an agent, you're working for someone else's brokerage. If so, how do I find a broker to work with? And will they be supplying me with leads? Okay, the way you find a broker to work with is you go out and make a list of brokers locally around you, and then you work your way outwards, okay? And then you reach out to them and you give them the value proposition of, hey, I've got this experience, I've got this training, here's my plan. Curious if you're interested in having a conversation about me being a straight commission sales, freight agent. Now, some of them are going to say no. Some of them are going to want to get on a call. But the reality is you're going to have to find, now there are people that are also going to place job ads, but most of the job ads you're going to see are going to be for brokers that are looking for experienced agents with a book of business. The large brokerage, so like my old company, LDI, or other larger agent-based brokerages are going to be difficult because you don't have a book of business. If you don't have a book of business, then those companies probably aren't going to entertain you very much. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of smaller brokers, okay, that are doing $1 million to $3 million to $5 million to $10 million that have been in business for a year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years that would love to work with an agent that can bring on clients and pay them straight commission. Why? Because they don't want to go out and spend 60 or 80 grand on a base to hire a salesperson to go out and then turn over 3 to 6 months later when they're not producing. Okay. With you, your risk is very, very low. So you make a list of brokerages, you do outreach to them. And here's what I'm going to tell you. If you contact 50 brokerages and you give them a risk-free value proposition and you put your best foot forward, and I'm not talking about just email, I'm talking about email, phone, face-to-face. If you do an outreach program like that to them and you don't get hired or you don't get an opportunity to become an agent, it would be the first time in history that anybody's ever came back to me and told me that they weren't able to do it. Okay. But if you think that everybody and their brother is just going to want to hire you as an agent just because you went through some sort of training and you don't have a book of business, well, then you're probably mistaken. But here's the reality. If you can't get a job as an agent on straight commission after reaching out to 50 clients, you're probably not meant for this industry. I'm not talking to you, Jay Royce. I'm just talking in general. You're probably not meant for this industry because it's a sales-driven industry, which requires you the ability to sell yourself. And you're selling something that's free with a huge upside to your exact target market. So I hope that helps. Again, there's other sources like LinkedIn would be a great place to go and network and connect, right? Find other agents that are new to the business that you can then get an introduction to their brokerage, right? There's a lot of things you can do, but ultimately it requires a little bit of work. Okay. Okay. Tips to get your first shipper. One of my favorite tips to get your first shipper when you're struggling to get your first shipper and start moving your first loads is this. When you're talking to prospects and they're trying to brush you off, tell them that you're more than willing to earn their business. Just give you an opportunity, even if it's the hardest freight that they have, the most difficult freight that they're struggling with, or major challenges that they're having right now. You will do that work and prove yourself. So what I'm saying is you have to find the pain within that organization. Give me your most difficult lanes to work on. Give me the freight that nobody else wants. And I will do my absolute best to try to connect the dots and serve you in that capacity. So what happens is if you're getting stiff-armed a lot and you've got prospects that really just aren't giving you those opportunities, don't walk away before trying to focus in on that difficult freight. That difficult freight is something that they may give you an opportunity because nobody else wants to work on it. Now, will it involve work on your part? Sure. Are you going to make a whole bunch of money on it? Maybe, maybe not. But the point is, even if you moved a load and you broke even, you just broke even on that freight, right? You had to pay $1,000 and your carrier was going to give you, or shipper was going to give you $1,000. You had to pay $1,000 to the carrier and you broke even. Or even if you lost $100, guess what? You now got your foot in the door and the opportunity for you now is exponentially more than it was prior to you moving that first shipment. The hardest part of the whole deal is just moving that first shipment. So be willing to do the hard stuff before you get the good stuff. That's a tip that I think could pay significant dividends for you if you leverage it. Josh, Is it recommended to work with platforms like UShip and Freightstar, or you just do cold calling is better? Okay. UShip and Freightstar are platforms where cheap shippers that want cheap rates go to in order to move their freight. Reputable shippers, legitimate shippers, shippers that you're going to have a long-term relationship, don't use those platforms. I hate to break the news to you. And if they do, they're far and far between. I've never seen a broker or an agent build a successful brokerage or agency from those platforms. Can you move a load here? Can you move a load there? Can you move a load? Sure. But you're not going to develop any sort of relationship or regular business with those clients, because their job, the reason why they're using that platform is because they want to keep you at arm's length. They want to make you fight for every single load and be the lowest bidder. So for me, those are a waste of time. The best shippers are not going to be on those boards. The shippers you're going to make the best margin on and have the best lifetime value, they're not on those platforms. I promise you. I've never seen a legitimate good shipper on those platforms ever. Okay, so personally, I wouldn't waste my time. And I looked at them. Trust me, if it would have worked, I would have been on it like a bum on a bologna sandwich, but it didn't, and it doesn't. It's pretty much bottom of the barrel. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, for prospecting on Mondays and Fridays, is it better to cold call or spend time knocking on doors face-to-face and add qualified shippers? Supposedly the connection rates are low on Monday and Fridays. I get mixed signals on this. Okay, so if you have the opportunity to go door to door and face to face, then that's always going to have a higher conversion rate than cold calls over the phone. It's just factual. If you can get somebody's ear for 1 minute face to face, where you can build some rapport, you can shake a hand. It's much harder for people to tell you no face to face than it is over the phone or to ignore your call. So I believe whenever you can do face to face, it's great. The problem is that most people, their niches are not just local, right? You may start local, but then you're going to expand beyond that. So you're not always going to be able to do face to face. So you need to learn how to use the phone. And the fact is, if you didn't, you have to make sales calls on Mondays and Fridays. If you don't, you're missing out on huge opportunities. Yeah, the connection rate's lower. Who cares? Who cares? Let's think about it for a second. If you don't prospect on Mondays and Fridays, you got 5 days in the week, and you don't prospect on Mondays and Fridays, that's 2 out of 5 days. I'm not very good at math, but we're going to do a math equation. 2 divided by 5. You're cutting out 40% of the time and 40% of the opportunities you have to prospect. So if I were prospecting 5 days a week and you were prospecting 3 days a week, and we were saying the exact same thing to the exact same shippers, who do you think would win more business? Me. It's just numbers. I'm going to be able to make 40% more calls than you. I don't even have to be better. I could be worse and still do better. So yes, maybe the connection rate is a little bit lower. Who cares? If you just get one shipper, one small shipper that shows up and picks up the phone on a Monday or Friday, and you get to do business with them, and you're doing 1 load a week at $200 a load profit, that's $10,000 a year in your pocket. If throughout the year, all you got was 5 of those, and you got them on Mondays and Fridays, okay? That's an extra $50,000 in your pocket because you decided to show up on Mondays and Fridays, okay? So don't try to overthink or try to over-optimize your time. If you're a startup, broker, or agent, 90+% of your time should be spent prospecting, okay? Customers and loads are like oxygen, okay? Without oxygen, what happens? We die. And so will your business. So you need to be prospecting and contacting as many shippers as you can in as many different strategies as you can, like your life depends on it. Why? Because it does. Okay? So I hope that helps. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for today. I hope that was it was a great way to stop, a great way to wrap this up. Appreciate you guys being here. Listen, if you got value from this live, if you learned anything, if I answered your question, if this was helpful in any way, hit the like button no matter where you're at. Truly appreciate it. If you want to share the stream, if you're on Facebook, click the share button. If you're on LinkedIn, repost it. Appreciate it. If you're not a subscriber on my YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. And again, if you guys are just before you go, hold tight. I got one thing you're going to want to hear. If you guys are already a broker or already an agent, maybe you're just getting started, right? And you're struggling with getting customers, because I heard a lot of questions around that. You're struggling to get customers, you're struggling to get shippers, you're struggling to get some traction. Go to freightbrokerbootcamp.com/waitlist. That is a link to my Freight Broker Sales Accelerator program. That is an 8-week live coaching program where I take that piece of my brain, I transplant it into your head. I teach you my best freight broker sales strategies, tactics, tools, but most importantly, the entire system that allowed me to do over $200 million as a freight broker. We've had over 1,000 clients through that program. You know, the rating, people that have completed that program have done a survey and they've rated it a 9.2 out of 10. I can't get any better than that. If you get on the wait list, it's not open for enrollment right now, but if you get on the wait list, you'll be the first to get notified when new spots open up. And I'm expecting here in probably the next 2 to 4 weeks, you'll get a text notifying you that there's spots opening up. You'll get to check it out. It's not a free program. It's not a cheap program, but it's worth every dollar. And some of my students have got huge ROIs on their investment. And I think you can too, but get on the wait list. If you don't get on the wait list, you won't have a chance to be a part of the program. So it's absolutely free to join the wait list, but I'm only looking for people that are really serious, people that really want to build business, because this is a very intensive 8-week coaching program where I'm working with you personally to help you navigate. It's, for me, in my opinion, it's the fastest way for a new broker to start getting 2 to 4 new shippers per month and hit 7 figures in sales their first year. So 12 to 18 months, let's say. Okay. So I hope that helps. Get on the wait list. Appreciate you guys being here. If you guys are just looking for startup help and you really don't know where to go, and you're just looking to get started as a freight broker, freight agent, you can check out freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Again, we've trained over 10,000 students. That's my startup program. It's very inexpensive. We offer a 60 to 100% unconditional money back guarantee. Again, we've had many students that have wanted to build 6 and 7 and 8-figure freight brokerages. Some of my top students are doing $1 million to $2 million a month. Okay. So if they can do it, you can do it. I can't promise, you the moon, but I can promise you that this system works. This program is well known to be the most cost-effective and comprehensive online freight broker and freight agent training programs. Have an awesome day. We'll see you next Monday on the next Freight Broker Bootcamp Live. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.